And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are on this Thursday morning. Glad that you have joined us as we do some questioning of the assumptions today, and we take your biblical, theological, I get it out, and worldview questions. And happy to have you. We did have some, I noticed Cliff mentioning, we had some streaming issues yesterday on YouTube. For some reason, it was only YouTube. And so we put up the recording. And yesterday's broadcast, if you had a hard time with that, you can watch the recorded broadcast and get that just fine and ready to go. I mentioned yesterday, I've got the book in hand right here, The Clattering, Clanging Christmas. And it's a little kid's book. It's just a fun book. Meanwhile, outside, the Twinkleton children were tucked in their beds, dreaming of delightful dolls and daring dragons. But the clamorous commotion woke them with a start. "What's that clattering and clanging?" they whispered, wide-eyed and wondering. But you won't know what that clattering and clanging is unless you spend $6.95. Some have suggested maybe I, do an audio version or a video version, and I might, so my grandkids, but they're coming to see me, so I might just read it. Who knows? Who knows? But it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Whoops. I do that every day, don't I? There was my house this morning as I was preparing to leave. About a foot of snow on the ground. Maybe more than that. I don't know. I didn't really measure it. But bunch of snow anyway. But we made it just fine. Oh, I asked this question yesterday to Pastor Timothy. Do you go by Pastor Timothy or Pastor Tim? Or do you go by something else? But he asked the question, is that a companion Bible on your desk? He says, it's my Bible of choice. And yes, it is. I keep the companion Bible. I use the enlarged type edition. And obviously I don't carry it around with me. I use it as a desk Bible. In the pulpit, I use a Schofield Reference Bible. And if I'm moving around, I use a Schofield. But here at the desk, I use a companion Bible. I like the big print because even the big print is kind of small. I still have to keep my spectacles there. But so much stuff. I happen to think everybody ought to have a companion Bible as a desk Bible, if nothing else. And we just happen to have those at Dispensational Publishing, since you do mention it. Let's see. I tell you what. Because it's Christmas time, I just noticed we've got 16 in stock. And this is of the large edition. It doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't say that on the cover, but that's what it is. And so we've got that in stock. So I tell you what, when this program is over, those are regular $70. I'm going to put them 30% off. That's a good deal, 30% off. That'll get you in free shipping still, if I think, yeah. And it'll be a nice Christmas gift. Alex in London, of course, Bollinger was an Englishman also. I know he lived in London at a while. He went to King's College in London, but I don't know. I should know. I was looking to see if it was on there. It's not. I don't know where he lived after college days, but it was London anyway. He says, can we write notes on the companion Bible? It's got a little bit of margin. I don't know if you can see that. Not a ton of margin, but it does have a little bit. Now, it does have, as you can see here, some marginal notes also that are there. And let me say, the companion Bible takes a little bit of learning to figure out what it is. Don't be overwhelmed at the beginning. It takes a while to figure out the outlines. The outlines are absolutely brilliant, but it takes a little while to figure that out. The marginal notes kind of tell you where in the outline you are, which is handy, because sometimes the outline is, for example, here I'm on page 1000, and it says here the outline, V1 of the outline is on page 999. Well, that's fairly easy. You can back up and you can see it. He does, by the way. I don't know that I ever noticed this. Let me just double check and see if this is true. It seems like he's got in the margin, a number at the top of the page that gives the date. We were talking about that yesterday with Schofield, and I could have looked right here. Let's see if he does that in the New Testament. If he's got the date there. I'm just going to go to Acts chapter 2. Okay, I don't see that in the New Testament. Maybe that's why I hadn't noticed that before. It was actually finished after his death. And I don't know if that's something he didn't get finished or what it was. But anyway, there's some places for notes, but not a ton. It's not really a note-taker's Bible. The companion Bible comes in several versions. You might check to see if there's a note-taker versions, because there might be one that is out there. We might be able to, well, I say that. The truth is it's public domain, so anybody could print it. We could print it. The problem is we can't print on Bible paper like this. And so our companion Bible would be this thick. You would not like it. So we do not print it. Helen, I was one up on you. I was ahead. She said, can the companion Bible go on sale one day? Yes, today, after this program. Okay, Pastor Tim or Timothy McGarvey says, I answer to almost anything, especially for dinner. So I'm going to call you Pastor Tim. I don't know why. That seems to fit. So Kim in Kansas, I like mine. She's got her companion. Yeah, it's so filled. You start to give up on it, and then you read the next line and you say, that's brilliant. That was worth $70 right there. I tell you what's worth $70 in and of itself is the appendices. Back here, where do they start? There is this set of appendices after the book of Revelation. I'll find it here eventually. And there we go. That much of it is appendices. Now, there are how many? Wow. 198 appendices. 198 of them. Just at random. The book of Proverbs, Introduction and Analysis. I should read that. Here's another, Appendix 103. The first fulfillment of prophecy in the New Testament. Here, there's 105. The usage of negatives in the New Testament. Here is the synonyms for the synonymous words for life, appendices 170. Just tons of stuff. And the introductions to the books, very, very good. The outlines are brilliant. Again, it takes a little bit of time. And then the commentary that goes along with the verses, I use it quite often. I'll show you this in electronic form. Let me pop this up for you so that you can see it. There we go. So this is Mark chapter 6. That's where I was yesterday, last night, if you caught that. And so he has these words in bold. That's the words from the King James text. So not. So verse 3 right here. Is not this the carpenter? So he says not. Greek, ou. Appendix 105.1. Not the same word as in verse 9, 11, 34, and 50. Now, that is a very concise way to say there's a different not here. You should check this out, because don't mix it up with verse 9 that says not. This is a different one. And then you know to pursue something. And you could look at Appendix 105.1, and there it is, oo, before a vowel, ook, before an aspirated vowel, ouch. It would be ook. Do not, or not, expressing full and direct negation, independently and absolutely, not depending on any condition or expressed or implied. There it goes. And through that, he would go through the various nots. So it goes through the, here's one of his outlines. His outlines are often chiastic. That means he looks at how the scope of a passage and how it comes to completion. It fulfills. It goes up the mountain and down the other side. Think of it as a mountain. You got the foothills over here, you got the foothills over here. You got the tree line over here, you got the tree line over here. You got the peak here in the middle. So, foothills, tree line, peak, tree line, foothills. What he was brilliant is discovering that you don't have the full scope unless you got down the mountain. And so he looked for that pattern there to put the whole thing together. Many times as I have studied Scripture, I said, I would have stopped this early and I wouldn't have gotten it right. I need to get all the way down the mountain on the other side. So, for example, here in John 6, 7 through 30, now this J3, it goes by the alphabet, T-U-V. That J3 tells us this is a sub-outline. It's within another because we're at the letter J here. But look at this. The mission of the 12 begun, come down here to the other T, the mission of the 12 reported. Now let's look at the two U's. Herod hears of the Lord, Herod beheads John. Let's look at the two V's. John, opinion of others. John, opinion of Herod. And all of this section was the mission of John ended. So look, if you look at it in a broad way, the mission of the 12 begun, the mission of John ended, the mission of the 12 reported. And you see how this mission of the 12 is interrupted by saying, hey, we got something different here, the mission of the 12 rather than the mission of John. And very interesting kind of stuff that's given there. Okay, that jumped into there somehow. I think it was Pastor Tim's question. Tim, again, who says, call me anything, just call me for dinner. You know, this morning, just because, well, just because it was nice and snowy, I was coming to town and I thought, you know what? I've got a bag of pinto beans. And Sunday for potluck, I cooked a ham and I stuck the ham bone in the refrigerator. I got cooking out there right now. Some pinto beans and ham hock. Just saying, Pastor Tim, if you want to be called to dinner. I just decided on the way to town. That's what I'm going to do when I get there. Okay, got to get into the questions, but here's one that I'll just, it'll take 30 seconds. No candlelight service this year? Absolutely, there is a candlelight service this year. 5:30 p.m. I need to get the advertising out on that. 5:30 p.m. December 24th, Mountain Time. Would love to have you all in person or online. You know, let's go to, I had a question that came in yesterday on YouTube comments, and because it wasn't fed into the regular system, I want to go ahead and feed it in now because it's very appropriate for the season. The comment was, why are some churches teaching that Jesus was born in September? This you hear fairly often, typically in kind of a negative way towards the celebration of Christmas. You know, well, let's get together and celebrate the Lord's birth on December 25th. Jesus wasn't born on December 25th, but it comes from really fundamentalist, conservative believers, and yet sort of oozes with this negativity towards December 25th. Here's what I think happened. I do not believe Jesus was born in September. I have looked at this fairly extensively. I've looked at the history of it. I've looked at the putting these things together through Scripture. I've got some videos out there. When was Jesus born? I think if you look, Randy White, when was Jesus born? You'd probably find some more detail into the Scripture of it. We know it was winter, by the way, and September is not winter in Bethlehem. Absolutely not winter in Bethlehem. And there's some other things that push it away from September. But here's what happens. Let's start with September. There's a number of ways you can come, because you don't look to Luke chapter 1 or Luke chapter 2 and say, you know, on the 25th day of the whatever month. You don't read the actual date. And so therefore, if we want to know the actual date, and of course inquiring minds want to know, if we want to know the actual date, we've got to do some degree of assumption. Now, there is a method of building a September birth, but it does involve some assumptions. And if you take those assumptions away, the September method does not work. Okay, you've got to have some assumptions for December as well. And if you take those away, the December assumption doesn't work. But here's what I think happened. I think that fundamentalists, who typically say he was born in September, fundamentalists will, and more, some evangelicals will say it now too because they might not like Christmas. Fundamentalists read a book, The Two Babylons. I was trying to think of it yesterday. The Two Babylons by Heslop. I've forgotten his first name. And that book said that December 25th was actually a pagan holiday, and it was incorporated into the church and brought paganism into the church. And fundamentalists said, oh, we don't want paganism in the church. And therefore, everything about December 25th and Christmas trees and St. Nicholas, it's all pagan, and we don't want any of that. Out with the paganism. And so then they said, well, when was Jesus born? Well, if we assume this, that, and the other, we can make it happen in September. Therefore, it happened in September. Now, I think that they made two flaws. One is they didn't question their own assumptions. They just said, oh yeah, this September date works very logically. and they ended up in September. We have to be careful for not only to question our assumptions, but to question the motive of our assumptions. Because the motive of our assumptions might make our assumption so subtly wrong that we almost can't even spot it. But the motive of the September assumption is we've got to get it out of December. So if you're not really scientifically, I like to be scientific in the best sense of science. Science is so messed up today. But in the best sense of science, you say, I'm going to just go with what the data says. And they've made some assumptions that fit their agenda, but aren't really all that legit. And then they built a logical argument on it, and they end up in September. Now, I think the second place they messed up is they believed Heslop in the two Babylons. They read, Christmas is pagan. Ruby, Christmas is pagan! They just immediately accepted it. I think they were wrong. As a matter of fact, do you know that historically we have evidence of Christmas on December the 25th before we have any written evidence of Saturnalia on December the 25th. But Heslop and all these others then that adopted his view say Christianity adopted Saturnalia, it's pagan. You know, it may be absolutely turned upside down on its head. It may be that Saturnalia adopted December 25th. The devil loves to do this. The devil loves to take something that is legit and pervert it. Very, very, very early on, Christians were celebrating Christmas on December the 25th. When you triangulate this, and again, what I mean by that, and I think I talked about this yesterday as well, is you've got two things, but it's the third you need. It's algebra. You got two things, and it's the third thing you need. And so, I got this in place, and I got this in place. Now I can figure out where that is. And you do this by dates. It's a process of elimination. You very quickly eliminate all but about, I'll say maybe 30 days, probably down to about 14 days. In a 14-day period of the year, going by really solid evidence, you can get the birth of Jesus. And guess what? It includes the 14-day period around December 25th. I think there's some pretty decent evidence for December 25th. So all of those who are quickly dismissive of December 25th, and I think a lot of the other traditions about Christmas as well. Talked about Santa Claus yesterday, I think. Or maybe it was the day before, I don't know. All of those who are quickly dismissive of it ought to stop and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe we can twist this. Now, I'll agree, Santa Claus, he morphed over time, but he didn't have his roots in some Nordic god. Honestly, it would be more true to say Santa Claus had his roots in the Coca-Cola company more than he did in a Nordic god. You can go back and you can find, prior to the Coca-Cola company's Santa Claus advertisements, Santa Claus was Father Christmas. He was Catholic, no doubt about it, but he was Father Christmas. He was St. Nicholas. He wore a mitre. It was much more Catholic than he was Nordic. So the Santa Claus we have today, maybe he's got some similarities, but honestly, I think it was, who was that guy? The guy that developed the Coca-Cola campaign back in the, what was it, 20s? Ah, there it is. Haddon Sunbloom. Haddon Sunbloom. Started in 1931. Sunbloom was commissioned by the Coca-Cola Company to create an image of Santa Claus for their Christmas advertisings. His illustrations of Santa, which depict a jolly, rotund, friendly figure in a red suit, became iconic and played a significant role in shaping the modern image of Santa Claus as we know it today. These images of Santa appeared in Coca-Cola's advertising for decades and became a significant part of American Christian Christmas culture, and certainly did. I think Haddon Sunbloom created Santa Claus. Prior to that, look up old Christmas cards prior to 1931. You're going to see a much thinner Santa Claus and a much more priestly looking Santa Claus. His roots are in Christianity. Now, as we've been studying in the Kingdoms of the Cross, Christianity was already a long time messed up, even by the time St. Nicholas came along. So a lot of things, I think we'd look at that and say, well, it was a little messed up at its core. Anyway, yeah, I agree. But to land that question anyway, that's why some people are saying Jesus was born in September. I would take on the debate. If somebody invited me to a debate, let me tell you something I'm thinking here. I'm just going to add this. In our annual Branson Conference, let me tell you what I'm leaning to. I haven't decided, so I could totally change my mind. But I'm thinking about the theme, prove it. Prove it. And taking some things like maybe Christmas was September 25th, or Christmas was December 20th, whichever side we go on. And then presenting both sides of the argument in a little bit of a debate style. Maybe I'll even do both of them. I'll argue for this one, I'll argue for this one, we'll let you all vote on it. Almost the judge and jury kind of thing that we have talked about. Things like, when was Christmas? When was Jesus born? Are you a saint? Speaking of St. Nicholas. Biblical chronology, now let me say this differently. Christian biblical chronology is almost wholly wrong. Putting some of these things out there. It could be a fun weekend. I haven't totally decided there, but it could be a fun weekend. Let's get in here, too. I've been a little slow here. Here's another Daniel question that I don't know if this came after our Daniel question yesterday or if it is a new version of a Daniel question, unrelated, but it comes from Deb at the Buffalo National River. Daniel chapter 7, verses 7 through 8. In Daniel 7, 7 through 8, does the fourth beast, there we go, does the fourth beast, dreadful, terrible, and strong, have to do with the world system? Let's stop right there for just a moment. After this, I saw in the night visions, behold, a fourth beast, dreadful, terrible, and strong exceedingly, had iron teeth, it devoured and brake in pieces, stamped the residue with the feet of it. It was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, had 10 horns. I considered the horns, behold, there came up among them another little horn, and you end up there with the Antichrist. Let me stop right there before I read the rest of the question. Does it have to do with the world system? I I think some good comments there. I'm trying not to get distracted. I'll have to come back to the comments. I think only secondarily does it have to do with the world system. I think it is a king, a kingdom, an empire. More so probably even with a specific empire of not specific kingdoms. I mean, specific kings. Now, a powerful empire obviously can have implications for a world system. You've got the American dream, the American economy, the American system, compared to, let's say, I'll be dated here a little bit, but the Soviet system, the capitalistic system, the socialist system. But those are so much embedded in the superpower. So, but that's secondarily. The world system, I don't think Daniel 7 and 8 is about a system itself. I think it's about a kingdom, maybe even a king. Let's go on. Deb says, are the 10 horns representation of people, tyrannical rulers? That's in verse 8. Verse 7. It had 10 horns. I considered the horns. There came a little horn, so 11 altogether. And then 3 horns were plucked by the roots, and you've got some other description that's given there. Yes, I think they are representative of people, actual kings. The beast might be the empire, the horns, actual kings. Let's see how that fits the rest of the question. Deb says, I know that most say it's a representation of 10 nations, but could it not be the rulers of 10 nations? Yeah, I think I would lean more towards the rulers than the nations themselves. You know, you could take it and say, well, this is the United Kingdom and France and Spain and the United States and Russia and Germany, and come up with 10. But yeah, I think it's more individuals. I'll try to back that up in a moment, but I think it's actual individuals. So could it not be rulers of 10 nations? I would say yes, it could be. I would even lean that way. Then, Deb says, it says in Daniel 7 and 8, I considered the horns. In this horn were eyes like the eyes of man. Exactly. In this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, a mouth speaking great things. Okay, then Deb says, the question takes a little twist, could this be AI, artificial intelligence? Now, let me find another verse here quickly. I'm working an illustration here at the same time. Revelation 17, verse 10. There are 7 kings, 5 is fallen, 1 is, the other is not yet come. when he cometh, he must continue for a short space. And the beast that was and is not, I want to back up just a couple of verses. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, shall ascend from the bottomless pit, go to the perdition, that they may dwell. And it goes on that from the foundation, it has a mind which hath wisdom. The seven heads are seven mountains, and there are seven kings. Okay, I want to apologize for a bit because I was putting the seven heads of the beast to be the same as the 10 horns. I was thinking, I got those mixed up. The beast in Daniel has one head and 10 horns. The beast in Revelation has 7 heads, and I don't know if it speaks of horns. So those are two separate things. Now, coming back to Daniel 7:8. I considered the horns, behold, there came among them another little horn. Let me just tell you, that is among pre-trib, pre-millennial dispensationalists of all varieties. Little horn is considered to be the Antichrist, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. So we had 10, we took away 3, and we added 1. Now we've got 7. Could that somehow tie into the Revelation 17? 7 heads? Revelation 17, what have you got? 5 have already been. Well, let's go there and see if we can make this connection after all. Seven, 5. Oh, that's 8, isn't it? It's because I was doing my fingers funny. No, we had 3 and we had 1. Okay. 7 kings. 5 are fallen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. One is, the other is not come. That leaves us with this, with an extra. I'm not sure we could connect Daniel. I'm trying to do it in my mind. There seems to be some problems in there, and that's not what Deb's asking. But there seems to be some problems in connecting the Revelation passage. So back once again, ladies and gentlemen. That's how Bible study works. You just sort of keep stabbing at it, and you'll go this direction, that direction, this direction. Finally, you say, it doesn't work. And then someone says, yeah, it does. You're looking at it wrong. So once again, Daniel chapter 7, verse 8. So if we take this little horn, once again, to be the Antichrist, before whom were 3 of the first horns plucked by the roots, and behold, in this horn, in the Antichrist, were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking the great things. Now, this is interesting that it says like. I think that like is a key word, because this seems to say, now we've gone to speaking metaphor, eyes, but they're like the eyes of man in that they see, but they're not the eyes of man. I think there's a decent argument you can make there. So then, there is the ability to see. Now, if we take the little horn to be the Antichrist, which is the beast with 7 heads, then we think of the Antichrist in the book of Revelation. It does tell us that he is going to require the creation of an idol. I don't think it's one singular worldwide idol. I think that if we were living in that day, he would say, Deb, you have to make an idol. Randy, you have to make an idol. Cliff has to make an idol, and Timothy has to make an idol, and Nancy has to make an idol. And then that idol somehow is able to see in the home and determine whether or not Deb is worshiping her idol. Has she given it the daily banana? Is she being obedient in her liturgical duty? So it does seem to say there's something in which the Antichrist, the little horn, is going to have some kind of continual surveillance and a mouth speaking great things. Now, the question is, could this be AI? I think it could certainly be a version of AI. But I'm still a little bit insistent that the key we've got to remember is it is artificial. It is not real intelligence. It is artificial. But to some degree, that doesn't matter. My intelligence is real. Your intelligence is real. But we can also recreate that over here. Now, let's just take artificial intelligence, as it's called, artificial intelligence, and let's use this in the sense of the ability to analyze what you are doing. I think more than ever before, artificial intelligence gives the government, if they can get access to it, and I suspect they can, or will be given it, if they can get access to the data, artificial intelligence can monitor the data in such an unbelievably good way that it can immediately know when you're doing criminal activity. So, for example, it would take an army of people to monitor your bank transactions. I mean, not your bank transactions or my bank. It'd take, one person to monitor it, and they'd spend a few minutes a day. But you got, let's just take Americans, 350 million people that they know about, which is probably, honestly, 500 million altogether. But let's just say 350 million people. And let's put those in families, so let's come down to 150 million people. 150 million bank accounts. I don't know how many bank accounts there are. Let's just call it 150 million bank accounts. Well, that's going to take, 10 million people to monitor it, and then they're going to have to, they're not really going to notice a subtle change. So pretend it's the IRS, for example. And they say, Deb normally spends $1,000 a month. But this month, she spent $1,100. Did she get a raise? She normally has deposits of $1,001, but this month, she deposited $1,200. Immediately, watch Deb. Let's make sure that her income tax shows that she got a raise. And it almost immediately, or Deb has started going down to the Buffalo River National marijuana joint store. But it's illegal where she is. Go get her. Sorry, Deb, for sending you off to marijuana. But anyway, The answer is yes, something like it. Something like it, because artificial intelligence really does open up the ability for surveillance beyond anything we had dreamed or imagined before. It is a pro at analyzing data. That's what it does, is analyze data. As a matter of fact, let's see if the conversation is recorded here today. I had a conversation this morning about cooking beans. I said, I'm wondering if you can cook pinto beans without soaking them, because I always soak them and I wanted them. It says, yeah, you can cook pinto beans without soaking them. Process take a little longer. Cooking them directly without soaking them might take 2 hours or more, depending on the age and quality of the beans, blah, blah, blah. Kind of talked a little bit about it. So I asked a few questions. Yeah. It has this conversational kind of thing. It's sort of weird. It said, do you have a specific recipe in mind for the beans? I said, I'm just going to put a little ham bone in them. By the way, someday I'll do this online. I love to just throw the weirdest thing just to see. So sometimes, do you have a specific recipe in mind? In fact, I had one of these yesterday. I said, yes, I'm going to cook it in gasoline. So that's a very interesting cuisine. But be careful, that's very dangerous. It'll never say, you idiot, what are you thinking? It's very politically correct. But today I said I'm going to put a little ham bone in them. And it said, that sounds delicious. And it went on and gave some other things. And I said, I responded, I thought it was interesting that you said that sounds delicious. Have you ever tasted beans? He responded, you're right, I haven't personally tasted beans or anything else for that matter. My response was more about acknowledging the popularity of and common appreciation of the combination you mentioned. Ham bone is widely known for adding a rich flavor to beans. So you might think about some onion and garlic too. Okay, so the point is, it's able to seem so human. That sounds delicious. You ever tasted them? No, but I've analyzed the data, and the data says this would be delicious. So it's got some frightening aspects to it of what could be done in the wrong hands, and what we have to acknowledge is Daniel chapter 7, verse 8, the little horn is the wrong hands. And furthermore, what we have to acknowledge is that the U.S. government as it stands today is the wrong hands. If I'm elected, I would put a wall of separation between an individual's data and the U.S. government. Congress shall make no law that affects the free use of it. Congress shall make no law that affects the data property of any of its citizens. My law would be, my face belongs to me. You cannot measure it without my permission. That if someone measures my face without my permission, they go to jail. That would be my law. That if someone analyzes the data of my bank account, that data would belong to me just as much as, maybe we should say even more so, as that little piece of property belongs to me. If you dig under 12 inches of snow, you would find it. Personal property rights, personal data rights, personal DNA rights. It's all mine. So the point is, the U.S. government already abuses that data and will use it against us. Now, it used to be that we were innocent until proven guilty, and that kind of fixed it because if you are innocent, if Deb is innocent, there's no reason to look through her data. In principle, that's what it should be. She's innocent. There's no, and until she's given evidence of a crime, and we get this is what used to be. She's given evidence of a crime, and so now we have to get a warrant. We have to go to a judge. We have to give evidence that this is why we should be able to look at her personal property. Can't go in her house without a warrant. Why can you go in her bank account? Why can you look at her debit card transactions? Why can you look at her credit card transactions? Why can you measure her face and see where she's gone using facial recognition? All should be utterly illegal, but it's in the wrong hands. It's in the hands of the U.S. government and every other government around the world. That was fun. That's why we don't get through many questions today, because we go in talking about everything. Helen wishes she was my neighbor so she could come get some of the ham and, the beans with the ham bone. I left quite a bit of meat on there too. Oh, it's delicious. It's going to be delicious. Alexander Heslop. Thanks, Cliff, for that. Timothy says the Companion Bible teaches that December 25th was probably closer to the date of his conception, not his birth. Okay, this is, yes, this is one of those assumptions that leads to September. To put the conception there. I think even Bullinger made a flawed assumption on that. I had to look at a little more on that. Okay, I can't read all of the comments. But there's some good ones there. I better get to the next question so I can take another one. Here's a simple one. Could one day a week, or maybe every other week, there be a 2-hour Ask the Theologian? Jay in Tennessee says. Well, first of all, Jay, that makes you my favorite person. Some people are like, why does he always go overtime? And Jay says, why can't he go 2 hours? You know, when I started this, I don't know if Jay, if you were around, when I started the daily broadcast, I used to do once a week. In fact, when I first did it, once a week, I had to plant questions because I didn't have anything to answer. It was me. All by myself. Who sang that song? I don't remember. So I decided one spring break, hey, it's spring break, let's do 5 days. I had in the back of my mind, I might do this forever. I didn't even tell Nathan. I was not about to tell Nathan, we're going to do it 5 days a week forever. And we did it for a half hour. It was a half-hour program. I think even before that week was out, I was not going a half hour. And it really enhanced the program to go to daily. Honestly, we've got enough stuff. I could go 2 hours a day. My challenge is I'm not getting my work done. I have authors out there saying, would you get my book done? And my other problem is I don't have the funds just to hire a big old staff, so it's me. So, I would have to, I'd have to get caught up. But I agree, it would be totally fun. I would love to do it, honestly. I'd go 3 hours a day, every day of the week. But it's my therapy. Thanks, Jay, in Tennessee. I'm going to take this question. Nikolai, good to see you again. It has been a while since we have said hello. Nikolai in Romania. I'm glad to hear from you. Or are you in London now? I'm not sure. You're Romanian, but I haven't talked to you in a while to see where you are these days. Okay. Nancy says, I thought for sure you'd burn yourself out doing Ask the Theologian 5 days a week. Then I realized you thrive on all the work. That is an honest statement. I don't know that I would have recognized that myself, but I can't stand not to have anything to do. It's been a long time since that's happened, but anyway, I do thrive on work. Okay, back to Nikolai. Sorry about that. Thank you for your dedication to your ministry. Thank you. I always listen to you with joy. Thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry to bother you with a question. Oh, shame on you for saying that. It's never a bother. Young Romanian like Nikolai, I'll take the questions all day long. Are you familiar with the teachings of Rodney Ballou? Yes, I am. And before we go on, let me just say, Rodney, a lot in the audience are familiar with Rodney as well. When I first stumbled upon Rodney, I watched him and I thought he's got some pretty decent stuff. He's in, is it Connecticut or New Jersey, or I think it's Connecticut. And I kind of like that little black screen he's got. It looks almost like a chalkboard, but I remember even sending it to Nathan and saying, what kind of board is this? That's kind of cool looking. I still don't know what kind it is. And I don't remember if I emailed him or I gave him a nice comment on YouTube or something. And I was pretty early on blocked. Didn't allow me to comment anymore. And I thought, that's odd because I haven't said anything but anything nice. But then I started hearing from others, and they were like, if he even thinks you disagree, he will block you. And I don't know if he'd listened to some of my stuff or what, but anyway, I got blocked really early. And I am not a fan of that. I've blocked a few people in my life, but not very many. And I always let them go way overboard. I mean, if they start a whole, filthy bunch of cussing or slamming somebody in the audience or something like that, then they'll get blocked. But other than that, I don't feel the need for everyone to agree with me. I kind of like when people come and say, hey, wait a minute. No, you did. Even if they do it kind of snarky. I'm snarky too. So if they come back at me snarky and say, you bald-headed Dumbo, why don't you know that? And there have been times I say, oh my goodness, I'm a bald-headed Dumbo. I didn't know that. Well, goodness, thank you. And you learn from these kind of things. So I am not a big friend of blocking. I don't always respond. Sometimes I respond, sometimes I don't respond, but whatever. Okay, that's probably neither here nor there. But then, I'll continue. Then I noticed Rodney was getting into some weird stuff towards universalism. I listened to some of his arguments on universalism and found that the problem is he was a right divider, but then he failed to rightly divide, and that's his argument on universalism. In fact, if you go to, let's see, yes, if you go to worshipify.com, and here in the search box, you just type universalism exposed, right here. I can't remember if there was two parts to that sermon. I guess there's not. There would be the outlines here. Now, most of this, and I even mentioned this in the sermon, so it's no secret, but this sermon, you can either listen to it or, again, you can read it or you can do both. It's Rodney Ballou. There's his name right there. A wayward mid-acts dispensationalist. teaches it on his large YouTube following. You have to be sadistic, he says, to see eternal burning in the lake of fire in the Word of God. Okay. Then I take his arguments for olam, ionis, a long time, and going on through some of those things. And I address that much more specifically than I do at other times. Okay, now to get to the question of our friend Nikolai. Recently, I found his channel on YouTube. I consider so far two interesting things from him. Number one, he believes we don't have free will. I didn't know that was his belief, but I'm not terribly surprised because his right division is mixed up. And so he sees some things that say, oh, you don't have free will, and he applies that to everybody. But let's go on. He believes we don't have free will. It is very strange for me how somebody can have this view. Nikolai says, I believe we have free will. Just because God knows the future doesn't mean we are forced or predestined to live a certain way. It just means God is so big that he knows everything. And that's a decent way of saying that. But Rodney, that's the not having a free will is the same. You always get there the same way the Calvinists get there, and that is you misapply certain scriptures. You make a non sequitur. It does not follow. Like here, God knows the future, and therefore everything is predetermined. Number two, he believes in the salvation of all. This is his universalism. Extracts from point 7 of his beliefs. We believe in the salvation of all. Those who are not believers in this life will be believers in the next. And mentions a few scriptures. He says 1 Corinthians 5:19, 1 Timothy 2:3-6, John 4:42, and many other verses prove that God is going to save all men. This is Ballou's statement. Some today, and some in the next life. Ballou continues, this is a guarantee from our loving Heavenly Father. And now we're back to Nikolai. Can you please comment on the above, especially number 2, and give some links then for that. Okay. Yeah, my comments on the above, on number 2, I would direct you to this particular sermon again, Universalism Exposed. And do I have a date on there? January 23rd, 2022. So it's only a year old or so. No, almost 2 years old. Check that out. I think, again, non sequitur is where I would put him. He connects things that should not be connected to build his theology. I haven't watched him probably about since that time. Left that. Okay. I'm going to take this one more. It's not in order. I just happened to see it, and I think I can answer that one. I love your church finder on the website, Dispensational Publishing, but would you consider, along with that one, making a separate directory that only shows Mid-Acts dispensational churches, regardless of whether they're Baptist or non-denominational, regardless of whether they're associated with Richard Jordan or the Grace Gospel Fellowship? I think it would be very helpful, but please don't remove the church finder you already have. The answer is yes, I would consider that, and I will do that. It's just when. Just when. I've told the history of dispensational publishing a little bit before, and I don't have time to get into it, but sort of this, you walk a tightrope. And I don't know if I should keep walking the tightrope or whatever. Mid-Acts are dispensationalists. Not all dispensationalists are Mid-Acts. So you got dispensational churches there, but they are of all variety. And if nothing else, I need to make it where you can search certain issues. So here is the church finder, and in that church finder, you can look at them on a map, but you can also, let's just say, well, let's go to the map. Let's open one up. Let's go right there up in northern New Mexico and go to Taos First Baptist Church. So you click there, and then it gives a little description. The pastor writes that. The church programs, they just click those things off in a checklist. Inspiration, scripture version. What you ought to be able to do is click on this and find all the churches that have these particular things. Like gifts of the Spirit. Signed gifts have ceased. That's an option that they can give. We ought to get it where you can say, I just want to look at churches that believe that signed gifts have ceased. It'd probably be one. Soteriology, free grace. Now let's see, Israel, I don't think there's anything in here that actually says mid-acts, but let's see, the kingdom of God is the future millennial kingdom. Now some of the others will have, already, not yet. So I ought to be able, again, to weed this out, narrow this down, whatever you want to call that, and look through there. Because the law was for Israel and is not an obligation of the church. I bet if we, if we were to look at this, let's just take one at random. Hope I don't offend anyone here too badly. Let's just take First Baptist Church of Holden. I don't know that church. And they are independent Baptist. Okay, they've got Sunday morning worship. Verbal plenary inspiration, they're KJV only. God speaks through the scripture alone. I would be okay with all that. Signed gifts have ceased. The kingdom is the future millennial kingdom. Israel is the chosen nation, will be used in the fulfillment of prophecy. The rapture takes place before the trib. The tribulation is the 7-year period of Jacob's trouble. A scripture passage is to be taken literally whenever possible. They are moderate Calvinists. That's the first thing that I see that I don't really like that. But I could probably convince the pastor. They're congregationally governed. They believe the church is to teach and train believers. The law was for Israel, not an obligation for the church. Tithing was an Old Testament requirement. I would look at this and I would say, okay, Pastor David, I like what you've got there. I'm confused as why you're moderately Calvinist, but other than that, I like what you've got there. Now, is there an algorithm that could search through that and say, you'd probably like this one. Even if you don't live in Holden, Massachusetts, you might be interested in their online ministry or whatever it is they've got. Notice we have a website problem there. It doesn't seem to be going through, but you might say, hey, this might, I never go to Holden, Massachusetts, but I'd like to see what they got going. So it's a good idea. I just need to have Nathan do the little technological magic to make that happen. I do like the suggestion, very much so. Okay, so much other good stuff in the comments, in the questions. Oh, that's good to know. KJVchurches.com has added mid-acts to their advanced search. We ought to be able to put it in an advanced search and just put that in there. And we ought to add it to the survey. Are you Acts 2 or mid-acts? Be easy enough. Right there. Thank you. Got a question from Gerard, one from Cliff, one from Alex, one from Rhonda, one from Randy, one from Daniel, one from Robert, one from Nancy. We need a 2-hour session. But this is Thursday. I study Romans on Thursday. We will have Bible study tonight, 7 p.m. Look forward to seeing you there. And once again, I am going to go. As soon as this program is over, before I do anything else, I am going to put the Companion Bible on sale, 30% off. And so it'll be there in a matter of minutes on sale. And you'll be able to get one of those for Christmas if you'd like to do that. And I still have one of these. One. Been trying to sell this. The Holy Temple in Jerusalem. Great Christmas gift. You need something for your pastor or something like that, or for grandpa, or for whatever. This is a good one right there. And there's one, $35. And my little Christmas book is just a lot of fun. You need some fun in your life, even if you don't have grandkids. Just read it yourself. Smile a little bit, say, I'm going to give that to the neighbor. And you need something for the neighbor kid. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Good to be with you here today. I appreciate it. And again, tonight, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, I will see you there for Romans, whether we listen live or archived. Till then, you can ask your questions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at AskTheTheologian.com. Thank you. We'll see you soon.